Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC, on WHTC.com, and on the WHTC app for your smartphone. Once again, here's your host, Gary Stevens.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town for this Monday, December 18th. Third Monday of the month. We spend this time with the State Senate Minority Leader, second-term Republican, Aric Nesbitt from the Lawton area. He represents much of Allegan County in the State Senate. He joins us via the phone line this morning for a good reason. It's kind of blustery out there. Aric, good morning. Hope all is well.
Hey, good morning, Gary. Great to be with you. I hope everybody's staying safe out there.
Yeah, staying safe and nice. This four-letter word I'll take. Warm. I won't take the other four-letter word called cold. Don't need that. That means I'm a snowdrift or something. We don't need Mr. Toe right now. Please be careful out there. All right. If you got a question for Aric, you'll be happy to answer it. 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. On Thursday into Friday, the Growing Michigan Together Council had its final meeting and submitting its final report. And I could not help but think of you, Aric, and how you had the, you wanted State Senator Lindsay to be a part of that panel. That sort of got ignored. And it just seemed as if this blue ribbon committee made, they came up with maybe some ideas, but, it just seemed as if this was an exercise in futility, I think, for lack of a better term.
Well, yeah, I mean, the governor announced on Mackinac Island earlier this year this Growing Michigan Together Council, and the whole goal of it was to try to create a bipartisan group to provide some recommendations to the state legislature, to the governor, and potentially some constitutional reforms to make some substantive changes to Michigan government to, what's needed to grow the economy, grow the population. And unfortunately, it kind of started off with the wrong foot by having, the governor in her executive order was allowed to make every appointment. And so she was able to handpick each person. And then I went ahead and nominated a person from our caucus, Senator Lindsay, out of, he represents kind of the borderlands of Indiana. And she never nominated anybody or appointed anybody from my caucus, from the Senate Republican caucus. So it kind of started off, kind of troubling. After 6 months of meeting, they came up with a series of I read through it, and I'm not sure if you have or not, Gary, but the overall lines is that it's a lot of the same issues that some of Governor Snyder's commissions 7, 8, 9 years ago recommended reforms to. And, things such as better accountability in our school system. We need to improve our road and bridge system and our infrastructure. We need to be more coordinated in our economic development system. We need to lower the cost of doing business in the state. And unfortunately, on every one of those levels, every one of those issues, that it seems that Governor Whitmer, it's an indictment on Governor Whitmer's administration. She's really made things worse. This last year, they took away accountability measures in our schools, things such as requiring students to be able to read by the third grade level, things such as using student growth as part of the teacher evaluations or simple letter grades for our school buildings. Blew through a $9 billion budget surplus without heavy investments in our roads and bridge system, which is a huge missed opportunity. And then continuing to double down on what seems to be a poor economic development program that the governor has, and on these Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers that doesn't seem to have much of a demand out there from the people, and so there's been a lot of pullback on that. And so I do salute the commission for the time they spent. Unfortunately, it ends up being an indictment, I think, on some of the failures of Governor Whitmer's leadership on making the state more expensive to do business in, and repealing accountability measures in our schools, and not being serious about the investments in our road and bridges that we need.
616-395-1450. Let's take a call for State Senator Aric Nesbitt of Lawton. Good morning. You're on the line with the senator.
Well, good morning, Gary. Thank you so much for taking my call. Senator Nesbitt, I agree with you wholeheartedly on what you've been talking about. My question is, what have you and your Republican counterparts done to counter that? I think something needs to be done on the conservative side of government in order to oppose and vehemently fight against such dictatorish sort of things. Look at the way the Constitution of Michigan has been changed. It's just abhorrent to free elections, and I'm wondering just exactly how have you fought for a free America, simpler Michigan, smaller governments? Where have you been on the battle lines?
All right, we'll get his response. Thank you very much for the call. Go ahead, Aric.
Yeah, no, it's things such as beginning of the year, all Michiganders were guaranteed an income tax cut, and the governor really did not want to provide an income tax cut to the hardworking Michigan families and seniors here in the state of Michigan. And the Republican, majority in the Senate, we stood together. We opposed the governor's plans on trying to undo the income tax. Unfortunately, is that the governor, again, went around the legislature. Attorney General Dana Nessel went ahead and issued an attorney general's opinion saying that income tax was only good. Income tax cut was only good for 1 year instead of forever. And we worked with outside groups such as the Mackinac Center and National Federation of Independent Businesses and several business owners to file a lawsuit, and that currently is in the court system right now. Same with many other areas, such as earlier this year, where on the budget items, instead of hundreds of millions of dollars, actually it's been billions of dollars that the governor's given away to some of the most profitable corporations through corporate welfare, that Republicans in the Senate issued dozens of amendments and unfortunately were voted down along party lines, but, saying that money could go to better uses, such as fixing our roads and bridges, fixing our local roads, instead of to some of, corporate welfare for some of the biggest, most profitable corporations in the world. And so the same with some of these, with such things as right to work, which is a basic tenet of I think, of being American, is the free association, whether or not you should be a member of a union. And that fell, along complete party lines, that every Republican voted against ending Michigan as a right-to-work state, and every Democrat supported forced unionization. And so right now it's about picking up the pieces and working to win back the majorities again, and that's what we're working on, because there is a difference in terms of things such as our freedoms, our labor freedoms, our economic freedom that matter depending on who is in the majority.
What can really right now minority Republicans do, not only in the Senate but also in the House? Because right now, to a certain extent, your hands are tied because of the fact that it's a slim majority, but for the most part, a lot of what the Democratic agenda was aiming to get at in 2023, they got to, because they basically held firm and got what they needed because of the fact they had enough votes.
Yeah, if there was one Democrat in either the House or Senate that would have come off some of those, any of those votes, they would have lost them because we had a unified Republican caucus, and the Democrats didn't want to figure out any middle of the way bipartisan reforms to do. And so right now, the legislature is out of session. Earliest they've been out of session in 55 years. They were forced to do that for really two different reasons. One was the fact that we wouldn't give them immediate effect or allowing the presidential primary bill that they wanted, that the Biden White House told the governor they wanted in February to happen. We said it could be after March 1st because there's a penalty for Republicans, a heavy penalty for the Republican delegation, the Republican National Committee, if it's before March 1st and you're not one of the four pre-decided states. And so they went to break early this year, earliest they've done it in 55 years. And I'd say that was forced because we stayed united as a caucus. And then secondly, is what also happened is that you're not going to see much, I think, partisan left-wing activity happen until probably after April again, because they lost in the state house. The Democrats lost their majority in mid-November. They had two Democrat members that won mayoral races in Metro Detroit. And so right now in the state house, there's 54 Democrats, 54 Republicans, and you'd need 55 votes to pass anything in the state house right now. And so there's that deadlock unless there's some kind of bipartisan agreement on moving any legislation forward. So there's the majorities are that close, and it's disappointing that with such tight majorities that they've jammed through such a left-wing partisan agenda.
Yeah. 616-395-1450. If you have a question for State Senate Minority Leader Aric Nesbitt of Lawton, 616-395-1450. How tough is it right now for you and other leaders in the legislature on the Republican Party to not get tied up or caught in the vortex of what is going on right now with the state Republican Party and its leadership? Right now, let's put it this way, the dirty laundry is being aired, and the state Republican Party is not looking good right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the state organization, and unfortunately, it's being led by somebody who doesn't seem to care about winning next year or taking the opportunity or time to do the proper fundraising and build the grassroots. And so what's had to happen is that Republican leader Hall in the House, myself, we've had to work to build up our own fundraising, recruiting, working to make sure that we have the tools that are necessary to win back the majorities in the House and the Senate. And it's unfortunate that the drama that's going on within the official, the Michigan Republican Party is the way it is. But fortunately, we have apparatuses on the outside to help make sure that we have the candidates in place, the early voting, absentee voting programs that are in place, making sure that we're recruiting candidates that fit the district, and working to make sure that we have the campaigns that are needed to win next year, because there is a difference in terms of what size and scope of government you have in the state government, the freedoms that we enjoy and appreciate as Americans, our private property rights that we have, our accountability in our schools, and empowering parents to make decisions that are needed for proper educational outcomes. And so there is a real difference between what it means to have a Republican majority and a Democrat majority. And unfortunately right now, the official organ of the Michigan Republican Party, the state organ of it, there seems to be too much infighting. And so I need to concentrate on ways that we can defeat some of the most left-wing progressive agenda items that the Democrats are introducing, and then working with my colleagues and grassroots around the state to ensure that we have the resources, candidates, and the right message that's needed to win back the legislature.
616-395-1450 if you have a question for State Senate Minority Leader Aric Nesbitt, 616-395-1450. Interesting. I don't want to, I believe an op-ed piece more than anything else was in one of the Detroit newspapers last week, basically saying it's time to get the state capital out of Lansing, move it back to Detroit. And there were some in Lansing that staunchly defended the fact that it is not in Detroit. There are others who are saying, yeah, bring the state capital back to Detroit. I scratch my head because of the fact that if you really want to have a divisiveness in this state, put the state capital back in Detroit, because outstate Michigan will feel as if they're being left behind.
Yeah, I mean, it was 10 years after we became a state in 1837. We became a state, and then in 1847 moved the capital to what's now Lansing, Michigan. There was a competition, statewide competition on where the state capital should be. And traditionally, it's a negotiated point. I think Lansing is probably equally inconvenient for most everybody in the state. Probably, it's an hour and a half from where I live, and it's about an hour and a half from Detroit. If you move to Detroit, you push it over to 2 hours from where I'm at. But typically, state capitals are not in the largest city in the state. They're typically, in a compromised location, and that location in Michigan's been Lansing, and I think that's been serving us well for what are we going on 180 years or so. And so I think it was apparently the reporter has having a slow news day and wanted to throw some chum out to the fishes for folks to try to buy that.
Yeah, it's like raw meat for the sharks. Here we go. But the thing is, though,
it was there for the territorial capital the first 10 years, but as you see in most states, it's usually it's not in New York City in New York, it's in Albany. It's not in Miami in Florida, it's in Tallahassee. It's not in Los Angeles, it's in Sacramento. And so you have that, around the U.S. it's typically in more of a negotiated, middle spot, and Lansing seems to serve those purposes.
Yeah, the point I was thinking of is, I know a few years ago, when I first moved out of Detroit into the Bay City, Saginaw, Midland area, there were some candidates running for state office who were running on an anti-Detroit agenda, and I thought at the time that if you really want to split apart the state, it is us against them. And that's been a campaign theme for a lot of candidates on both sides of the fence for years. The people in Southeast Michigan says outstate Michigan's against us. And the people from outstate Michigan says, everything's been focused on Detroit. As I said, if you really want to split up the state, move the capital back to Detroit, and you really will get the us against them mentality.
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, is that whether we like it or not, that when most people outside of Michigan think of Michigan, they don't think of the hundreds of miles of pristine lakeshore we have, the Great Lakes. A lot of times they think of Detroit first. And I think it is important to have a successful, thriving, big city, and it's been unfortunate the way it's fallen over the last 60 years from one of the big booming metropolises in North America to kind of a shadow of itself. And so my hope is that we all can agree that having a thriving, successful Detroit, I think, is important for the economic engine of Michigan. And it's been very disappointing to see what the leaders in Detroit have done to that city over the last 60 years.
Because Aric has got some things he needs to take care of. We're going to button up our conversation with him right now. Just want to pass on to those who are interested in needing to get a hold of his office. It's 517-373-0793, 517-373-0793. And you can check on things online at SenatorAricNesbitt.com. It's ARIC, SenatorAricNesbitt.com. I wish you and your family not only a blessed Christmas, but a safe and happy New Year. And if all goes well, Aric, let's do this again in January.
Sounds good. Merry Christmas to everybody, and Happy New Year, and talk to you soon, Gary. God bless.
Thank you very much. Aric Nesbitt on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.